Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hi, and welcome to Reloscope, the Relationship Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm Marie Stella, your host from Melbourne, Australia. Let's start the show. Welcome back to the show you love, buds. Today we're delving into the heart of what makes relationships go the distance, shared meaning. But we're not talking about candlelit dinners and heart-eyed emojis. We're exploring the importance of building a mutual narrative that transcends Instagrammable moments. And science has a lot to say about this, so we're joined by relationships counselor Yvette Leech to find out more. Hi Yvette, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hi, Marie. Thank you so much for giving me this wonderful opportunity.
Of course. Thank you for taking the time to join us. So tell us a bit more about yourself and how you got into this.
Well, I was actually studying my Bachelor of Counselling, and in one of the subjects, it was about relationships. And then I sort of thought, wow, this is incredible and not as daunting as I thought, working with two people rather than one. So that sort of got my attention, and that's when I sort of, delved into relationship counselling.
That's amazing, and we really like to get to know you better. So this is the Have You Met Yvette Leech section. My first question for you is, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Oh, I love going for a walk and a run, listening to a podcast or audiobook.
Yeah, it's always like one of the most relaxing activities to have just after a long day as well. Do you read any books?
Oh, yes. I am a big fan of Brené Brown. And one of my highlighted books, I suppose, of hers is The Atlas of the Heart, which is based on 87 different emotions.
So tell us a bit more about that book that you just mentioned. What are some of the key takeaways you got from it, and what's your favorite thing about it?
I suppose it really expands our vocabulary, our emotional vocabulary, because a lot of people I've noticed, especially my clients, are very limited and they don't know how to articulate, their emotions, let alone identify them when they're feeling it. So it's a very useful, book that anyone can, read and understand. It has lived experiences in there as well.
That's really, really interesting. I've got to look it up. My boyfriend's really bad at articulating his emotions, so maybe that might help to some extent. And I know some people who have emotion blindness as well, which is apparently a thing which I didn't know about until very recently, actually. So that's something I've got to look into. How about films? Are there any that you've watched recently that you've enjoyed?
Marie, I have to say, I don't really watch that much TV. However, I did come across a limited series called From Scratch, and it's actually based on, relationships and, and attachments, which is based off a true story. And it was just brilliant.
So what is it about?
So it was about, a man and a woman falling in love. However, they come from different culture backgrounds, spiritual backgrounds, different family dynamics. So there's a lot of difference, but they, had that shared meaning in their relationship and, were both working towards it, regardless of all the life challenges what were thrown at them. So,
That's
and it was,
amazing.
and it was just amazing to watch as well, Marie, how people can experience more than one emotions at the one time.
Definitely. Is this series actually on Netflix? Because I think I've watched it before.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
it
it
is.
sounds really familiar. Was there like a chef or like someone who's cooking in that show?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah, I do
Lino.
remember
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I remember it. Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, what a great pick. So, are there any podcasts that you listen to?
Brene Brown's Unlocking Us. And I do have to highlight that they have Brene Brown actually hosts with the two sisters who actually story it is from the series of From Scratched. So they actually talk about all the nitty gritties and behind the scenes. So, Brene Brown has a lot of guest speakers on there who come in, share their lived experiences, movies, books. There's sort of no limitations there. So, highly recommend that as well. And that's found on Spotify.
That's amazing. I've got to look it up too. I do really like listening to lived experience, and there's also like this comfort in knowing that there are people out there, just regular people like all of us who have gone through some kind of experience that's similar to ours. It makes us feel a little more like less alone in a sense. So that's great. Um, in terms of role models, is there anyone that you look up to?
Um,
Apart from
well,
Brene Brown.
yeah, I was going to say Brene Brown. Um, I yeah, she's one of my top ones. I would say Dr. Suzanne Johnson or Dr. Sue Johnson, and she's the pioneer of the framework that, it just resonates with me. So of emotionally focused therapy.
Yeah.
When I
What are
love
some
her
of
passion behind it. Yeah, sorry.
what are some of her qualities that you look up to the most?
I love it that she, continued to follow like her calling, regardless of everyone saying, that emotions weren't, really acknowledged, they didn't matter. And she pushed through that and did research. So I suppose her drive and her discipline, and, back then being a woman in sort of that research field and sort of pushed those limitations. So she's very inspiring.
That is amazing. I can't imagine having that much willpower and just sheer determination. It's just incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I feel like we got to know you a bit better, and it's great to hear all of the things that you love. Now we're moving on to the interview section, and the first question we like to ask is, what is a relationship to you? How would you describe a relationship?
I suppose at its core, a relationship is a unique bond shaped by mutual understanding, support, attunement, accessibility, and engagement between two or more people. So whether that's, family, friends, romance, or even colleagues. So, or even and with oneself. And that's, really important because a lot of people don't realize that we need to have a relationship with ourselves as well. So,
Yeah,
and the connection is established through shared experiences, shared meaning, and emotions. So,
absolutely.
specifically in a romantic relationship, there's a special bond characterized by emotional and physical intimacy and affection. Effective communication and trust, they all play like a big role, and mutual respect. So that just helps shaping a narrative of shared experiences, and it's a commitment to one another to building a life together.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the context of a romantic relationship, does a relationship still hold the same meaning, structure, and importance as decades ago?
Um, Relationships have definitely evolved over the years, and that's influenced by social changes, technology advances, and shifting cultural norms. While the core values of connection, love, trust, and compassion, they all remain the same to human experiences. However, the dynamics and structures have adapted.
hmm Yeah. And how would you define shared meaning?
So I would define shared meaning. It's like a secret culture, I suppose, that only a couple or a group of people are able to understand. It's sort of like the mutual understanding and interpretations of symbols, words, experiences among individuals and community.
Mhm. Can you explain what it means to create shared meaning in a relationship, and why is it important for the longevity of the relationship?
Yeah. So creating shared meaning in a relationship is like building a unique culture that exists between you and your partner. So it involves establishing goals, values, and traditions that hold significance for both individuals. It's not just about similar interests, and that's where it trips a lot of people up. It's about co-creating a narrative that gives the relationship depth and purpose.
Mhm.
So I suppose shared meaning actively shapes a relationship and can be achieved through various means such as shared experiences, shared culture, effective communication, and the use of common symbols, language, roles, and rituals and goals as well. So there's a lot that goes into it to
Yeah.
build that up foundation.
You explained that so well. It was very concise, and I can think of a few situations in my life where there have been shared meaning in past relationships too. But I'm curious to know, are there any examples that you can give us yourself?
So so I suppose when we start to get to know each other, and as we are forming a shared meaning, what happens is we start to bring in, like our, personal values, and we start to build layers. And what happens is we start to share those things between ourselves, which not a lot of people know about us because not everyone's the same.
Mhm. Yeah. And how can couples identify their interests, values, beliefs, and goals, and all of this kind of like to analyze, and how can they do it in order to establish a stronger sense of shared meaning in their relationship?
I suppose like the goal here, Marie, is not to eliminate the differences, but to understand, respect, and integrate them into a cohesive relationship. So actively working on the aspects helps couples establish stronger shared meaning, fostering a deeper connection and understanding, and like embrace that uniqueness that each partner brings to the relationships, because a lot of times people think they have to compromise when they don't. So different views are opportunities for growth and enrichment rather than a source of conflict. So
Yeah.
this approach, promotes a more resilient and harmonious bond between partners, and how individuals within the partnership can achieve that is by going and doing some individual reflection, and just, trying to connect with themselves and, just, try to work out what are my values and my beliefs. So another one that's really important is to be able to have some open communication. And that is like just, you know, dedicating time for, that conversation with each other. So, both parties know it's important and it's a priority. So also, I just want to highlight like common ground. So when people first, get together and they start developing those shared meanings, it's always good to go back and reflect on them. What sort of brought them together in the first place? And then maybe that's when they can build those special rituals together and just start to really embrace that foundation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what are some signs that a couple may be lacking shared meaning in their relationship, and how are they able to recognize these signs?
Okay, so this is a great question as well, Marie. When shared meaning starts to diminish in a relationship, you might notice like a few different signs or red flags. One significant one is a sense of disconnection, and that is the feeling that you're drifting apart from one another. So it feels like I hear a lot of comments from my clients, like I feel like we're just roommates or housemates rather than, partners. So if both partners are pursuing individual goals without integrating them into a shared vision, like a roadmap, it's another flag. So also, when you start to communicate with your partner, it starts to become more transactional and less about emotional connection. So that's a really good one to just sit back and observe and reflect on how you're communicating to your partner.
And what are some examples that the communication is transactional rather than emotional?
I think it's more about, the basic mundane sort of, well, I'm going here and that's about it. So
Mhm.
short, sharp, shiny, not really
Yeah.
respecting, the other person's boundaries, and sort of putting themselves first rather than, trying to achieve things as a couple and, just having that sense of security in that
Right.
foundation.
Yeah, so kind of like, well, I'm going here and there, but I'm only telling you this because you're my partner and that's it, and not because I actually want to tell you
Yeah,
what's going on my day. So
yeah.
that's would you say that's kind of like a transactional conversation?
Yeah, it is. It's, when it's more blunt and it's more like I have to,
Yeah.
or like a chore to just tell someone rather than, hey, I'm just going out. I'm going to be here. I'm not too sure how long I'll be, probably 3 hours. And, like if I'm going to be longer than that, I'll check back in with you. So
Mhm.
see the difference of,
Yeah.
expanding that conversation, being aware and mindful of your partner. However, when it goes to transactional, I'm going here. So, and that's about it. So it's very blunt. It can come across rude and, yeah, not as, understanding and compassionate.
Yeah. And when a relationship reaches that point of like transactional communication, is there any way to kind of revive some of that shared meaning at that stage?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So the first step is just recognizing when these red flags come up. And I just want to say, Marie, also, another big red flag is one where you feel like spending time together becomes a joy. And instead of feeling, excited about spending time together, it's more like a chore, it's a drag, you're starting to regret it, you're avoiding difficult conversations. So that's another crucial one as well. And so for all of these, it's pretty much about starting to become aware of what's going on and recognizing, the signs and what sort of needs, the couple's attention. So once, they've identified, what's going on, what's lacking, what's changed and shifted, they can just allow space for each other, and create a safe, emotionally safe environment where couples feel like they can open up and, just have those deep and meaningful conversations where that they can share their aspirations and dreams and values with each other without feeling like they're being judged. So to find common goals and create rituals, and traditions that reinforce their connection. So a lot of times, when the shared meaning's starting to diminish, what happens is that disconnection comes in, and then all of a sudden the communication starts to, decrease and become rigid and, hard and transactional. So what happens then is the rituals that couples start, they started out in their relationship, they start to drift away as well. So it's really good for them to say, hey, we used to do this together. Why don't we start bringing that back in? Because I really enjoyed that. So reintroducing those, traditions and rituals that they started off, from the beginning. So, and if they really struggle, I suppose, couples can always go and seek professional, couples therapy. So they can just find different ways that they can try to work out what works for them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to trying to establish or reestablish this shared meaning? And how can couples overcome them?
These questions are great, Marie. While establishing shared meaning in a relationship poses as challenges, it reminds a fundamental element for forging a robust and enduring connection. So it's really important that, the couples really try to cultivate that self-awareness, because what happens is that sometimes, we go into relationships or we're in relationships, but we don't really know and understand our own personal triggers, our attachment needs, and they are vital components to be added to, the shared meaning of like what their basic needs are. And, as before, as I said, that people struggle a lot as well, Marie, with articulating, what they're feeling, or what emotions, arise for them when they're faced, with, difficult times. So, and the communication, we need to be open to communication. That's a big one. And just eliminating any communication barriers.
And is it possible for couples with different values and beliefs to create shared meaning? How can such couples find the common ground?
Absolutely. Now, this is just really refreshing for my couples to hear. While it might take some effort, couples with divergent values and belief can indeed establish a shared meaning and uncover common goals. So I guess the key element in this process is creating, that environment of emotional safety, what I mentioned before, and that allows the couples to open up and be vulnerable, and and that allows them to just sit and communicate more effectively without feeling like they're being, judged, for just, opening up to their partner. So, it is crucial for both partners, to express their own personal perspectives, in that safe environment.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. And I also wanted to ask, many people do believe that passion fades over time in long-term relationships, and it is a very common issue. Would finding shared meaning help to mitigate this issue and maintain passion in the relationship? Is this something to think about in the earlier stages of the relationship, or is it kind of an unnatural thing to bring up?
Oh, this is fantastic. So, with shared meaning, it acts as a binding force that fortifies a relationship over time. So, it's like a protective factor. So, when couples align in terms of goals, values, and purpose, it has the ability to create a deeper connection, offering them an enduring, focal point for collaboration of, future endeavors. So this enriching dynamic extends the relationship beyond the initial pattern. So that establishes a resilient foundation for a long time fulfillment. So it just, it really builds that foundation. So it's like a resource for couples that they can draw strength from over time. So while, passion may, experience fluctuations, shared meaning remains consistent,
Hmm.
throughout time.
Yeah.
So discovering shared meaning provides, a potent strategy for sustaining the vibrancy of a
Hmm.
long-term relationship. So what that's saying is, we can keep going back to that shared meaning as a roadmap and drawing on it when we start to feel, okay, something's not working, something's shifting. And we go back to that shared meaning as a resource for us and as, like a symbol of strength. And so couples can really draw on that.
Yeah, that's great. Lastly, what advice do you have for couples who may be struggling to find common grounds and shared meaning due to differences in their personal values and goals?
Um, Effective communication
Hmm.
is a crucial element when it comes to open dialogue in a relationship, and that always helps. When couples are faced with challenges in differences in values and goals. So a lot, active listening, that's very important because a lot of times we assume what our partner needs. So, and then of course, next thing, partners are, oh, but I did this. However, there's been some, miscommunication, and all of a sudden they're sort of not on that same page or on that same wavelength that I was mentioning before. So that's really important. And I suppose I really want to emphasize that it's not about winning or losing. It's about, discovering, I suppose, what sort of suits both of you rather, as a couple, as a team rather than just two individuals. So just navigating, the divergent values or goals, demands that sort of effort and openness in communication. But, couples need direction. And that's where I said, that vision is like the vision is like a roadmap.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I learned a lot. It sounds like these conversations are really tough, but really rewarding to have as well. Now we'll move on to the practice/habit section. And this is where we ask you some questions about the everyday application of what you shared with us. So, our first question for you is, what is a practice that you do or have done with a partner to establish shared meaning in your own relationship?
Oh, this is a good question. Um, so I have to say, from past experiences, Marie, is that it's really important that, we need to start to identify who we are and
Mhm.
get to know, ourselves actually before going into a relationship, because we can't really, share or disclose or come up with our values and goals
Mhm.
with a partner if we are unaware of them. Does that do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is an activity that you've done with your partner?
I suppose it's one of those really confronting things of sitting down and having those difficult conversations that no one wants to have early in the relationship.
Mhm. And is that something that you enjoyed doing?
Um, I suppose it's one of those things, Marie, that it's better off for the relationship and both individuals to, you know, get it. I won't say get it out the road. However, it's more beneficial to couples to have it at the beginning of their relationship, because what that does is sort of sets the scene and,
Mhm.
it contributes to that foundation of shared meaning,
Mhm.
rather than, going into a relationship and all of a sudden, it's all wonderful. I think they call it the honeymoon stage,
Mhm.
and, life's a breeze. And then and then all of a sudden the honeymoon, stage stops. So what happens is, and then couples are normally faced with, um, things like, I don't know what happened. Who are we? What's going on? So that's where I really, I really learned that hard, difficult conversations are, they're very important at the beginning of a relationship. However,
Definitely.
for our audience who, are going to watch this, it's okay, even if you are in a relationship and if, they have been, in that, particular relationship for a while, it's okay to, have those difficult conversations, you know, as soon as possible, sort of thing.
Yeah. And how often did you practice it in the past, or how often would you recommend practicing this?
Um, each individual's different, each relationship's different. So from my personal experience, I would say I, did it at least once a month. And because that allows time between each difficult conversation. So you can sort of see how things play out, and then you can
Yeah.
both reflect on it, and then you can sort of, make any adjustments without it
Mhm.
having too much time in between. So I guess it all depends on, the couple with how regular they want to do those difficult conversations.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I myself, I kind of dread some of these conversations sometimes. I know they're good, but I have this tendency to put them off until it's absolutely necessary. And when that happens, it's not it's not pleasant having to do it, especially when it you you know that you need to have that conversation like right now. So it's always best to do it when it's not something that you have to do.
Yeah,
Um
that's right, Marie. Can I just
yeah.
jump in here too? Because that was really good and really important. Is that that's how couples come to me, where they're that escalated,
Mhm.
where they're that disconnected, they've left it too late. So it takes a lot more work,
Mhm.
to bring them back to feel safe enough,
Mhm.
to be vulnerable, to actually open up and have those difficult conversations. So I suppose that's, really good recommendation, to our couples out there is, to prevent such a hard reconnection is to have those difficult conversations, on a more regular basis.
Mhm, definitely. I feel like I'm very familiar with the feeling of wanting to leave it to the latest possible minute, not just with this like tough conversation thing, but with everything else. But that's besides the point. But with this tough conversation thing, it's like kind of I'm having such a good time. Why would I ruin it? But then you've got to think like to later in the future, it's gonna be your future use problem. And then for some people, meaning me, I would just be like, well, it's future Marie's problem. You know what I mean? But it's probably for the best to do it then. It's just like doing your taxes. Like just do your taxes to get it over with,
Well,
not an
that's
easy
right.
task, but you're gonna freak out even more if you leave it to the last minute to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, because like that stage, and I'm sure that you probably feel it too, is that you go into sort of panic mode of, going from, I feel really good right now. I'm going to avoid it a little bit longer. And then
Mhm,
all of a sudden, that happiness leaves you and that joy, and lurking of, doubt and, things that you need to confront and talk
mhm.
about. However, they sort of just linger there in the background, and it just makes it so much harder to go to your partner without having that sort of resentment and bitterness.
Great. So I'm not the only one who goes through this.
No, no, you're not alone. Not at
Good to
all. It's
know.
quite normal.
Amazing. That's great to know. Thank you, Yvette, for sharing that with us. Now we're moving on to the open mic section. And this is your chance to talk about anything that you're passionate about that doesn't have to be related to the topic at all. So the floor is yours. Take it away.
Oh, okay. So I thought, Marie, I might just come in and talk a little bit, about connecting with ourselves. I see a lot of, of my clients who come in and, they really struggle with identifying what emotions are going in there, going on for them in their body when we have these really deep conversations. And so what I try to do in my sessions with them is really try to ask those, evoking questions that really try to, bring out the emotions, because that allows, the clients to help them sort of, takes them to a time where they have an experience. So, within the, session, a client will come in, they're struggling with something. However, when we go sort of past the surface level emotions and dive deeper to those emotions that we have locked away and thrown away the key. So do you have those, Marie?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, we all do have them. And they're the ones we like. They don't exist, but you know that they're there. So what I help my clients do, and, we go and we gently explore those emotions, because a lot of times these emotions sort of come up, when something happened to us in, childhood. And I'm not talking about, when I say trauma as well, I don't mean like a car crash or anything of huge significance. People aren't aware that trauma can come from emotional starvation, because it's, traumatizing. So a lot of times, because emotions weren't recognized that much, years ago. So they've only started to get, the acknowledgement and how much power they have over us. So I really try to connect with that emotion, within my client, get them to connect with it, and then try to get them to, identify their body, sensations. Because what happens when we numb out or, shut down or suppress those emotions, Marie, is that we tend to not really register any, body sensations. So when we're there sort of, poking around in those emotions, they sort of become heightened. And that's, like our ticket to go in there and, just explore, like, what are you feeling on your body? Like, can you tell me where it is? If they're crying, like, what are your tears trying to tell you? Things like that, to really get them connect. And then, I ask them and help them try to make meaning of, what they're feeling. So you see this nice pattern is that we try to identify the emotions and the body sensations, try to make meaning of it. And then they take us, like transport us, I should say, Marie, back to a time when we felt these emotions really strongly. And then what happens is, we break down, this incredible experience that they had, which was traumatizing. And a lot of times, in session, like this is with their partner present as well. And, partners see a different side to their partner and what they experiences. So it gives them some sort of, perspective, understanding, of what their partner is actually going through.
Yeah,
So
that's really interesting.
yeah,
That's so interesting. And I'm such a huge believer of like healing your inner child as well, because a lot of what you are now as a person stems from what you went through as a kid. And a lot of us just kind of, it's just insane to me how all of us just waltz around pretending none of what we went through as a kid affects who you are now as an adult. And maybe that might be true for some people, but it's definitely not the case for a lot of people too. So it's really interesting to kind of dig back into what happened in your childhood and all the way back and see how it's affecting you now. So that's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you so much for joining us today. If our listeners want to find out more about you, where can they go?
I have a website at www.oceansidehealthwellness.com.au, or I'm found on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn.
Amazing. We'll link that in the show notes below. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.
You've been listening to Reloscope, the Relationship Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. For more episodes like this from 10 different life management perspectives, search LMSL on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, so you can get updated on everything we have to offer. We have a wide range of topics readily available for you to check out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps us grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at re.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.